Cinco de Mayo school committee meeting. Dino, can you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. First order of business, we have consent agenda minutes from April 14th, 2022, and oath to bills and payroll.
I wasn't here, but I.
Anyone want to make a motion to approve the?
I motion to approve the notes.
Yeah, I can second it. I was here and watched it. I watched the meeting.
All right, motion made and seconded. This is a not roll call vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. This is our first opportunity tonight for interested citizens. Dorothy, we have anyone with their hands raised? Yeah. All right, that would bring us to our recognition. I'd like to recognize our newly appointed one-year school committee member, Bino Patel. Like to mention?
Yes, sure. Welcome, Bino. Looking forward to having you as part of our team. And hopefully next year we're going to get back into more of a normal business around the table. And we're excited to have you on board. I listened to the interviews the other night, and very impressed with answering your questions. It'd be a definite asset to us. So welcome.
Yeah, we had a lot of great applicants, and you know, just everyone agreed it was the right choice. So that's saying something. So it's really strong candidates we had.
Agreed.
Right. All right. I just want to take a moment to recognize former school committee member Timlin Racius for her 2 years of dedication and commitment to the Wilson Public Schools. Dr. Quenchi, if you want.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank Timlin for her dedication and commitment for 2 years on the school committee. Obviously, the 2 years that she was on the school committee was atypical. We were immersed in conversations about the pandemic in terms of what that's to do. Looking at data and trying to tease out what data was well done and what data was thrown together very quickly. Our local data was always spot on, but when we looked at articles, scientific journals, etc., personally, I found at times that to be very frustrating because their methodology lacked crispness at times. And Timlin just did an outstanding job, and she's been doing things within our school district for many, many years, well known with our PTA, and we're going to miss her. So thanks, Timlin, for everything that she's done.
Thanks, Timlin. I know you're up there somewhere.
Hopefully she's watching.
I'll turn it over to Justin.
Sure. And at this time, I'd like to recognize and thank Matthew Hunt for his 6 years of service on the Littleton School Committee. You had big shoes to fill as the incoming chair. Fontanella's legacy, and you know, we thought perhaps it was going to be a very normal year, and there was a little bit of COVID thrown in there for you, which you handled well. And the entire school committee, I spoke with Brad as well and Jen. We just want to thank you for your steadfast leadership and your calm demeanor throughout all of the meetings. We very much appreciate the time and energy and effort that you put into the 6 years, but most importantly, this year as the chair. So sincerely, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Matt.
Thanks, appreciate it.
Kelly?
Matt, thank you so much for your commitment and dedication to our students, the district, and the community. It's been a pleasure working with you for 6 years. It's a little strange for me this evening because after you're done, it's pretty well fairly new school committee for me. 12 years that I've been here, I've been fortunate to have a lot of consistency on the school committee, and certainly paved the right road, and we have a pretty solid road to go on as we move forward. Matt, I've always appreciated your leadership, your thoughtfulness, and having the opportunity to work with you for 6 years. It's been a pleasure. I consider you to be not only a leader within the school committee, but certainly as somebody that I look up to and view you as a mentor. And I'm going to truly miss the many, many conversations we had during the last year that you were chair. And on that note, stepping into those shoes, Matt, I was just so impressed that you were up to those challenges. You did an outstanding job listening to all the different viewpoints and helping us make sense of what the best direction is going to take. We should take more correctly during the pandemic. And our district is a far better place because of you. So thank you so much, man.
Excellent. Steve wants a picture.
Can't turn down a picture.
Perfect.
Thanks very much.
Your 6 years of service is more than the rest of the school committee put together.
Yeah,
5.
Then you think the
I
fun.
never thought of that.
You think Mcdonough had 15 years?
Yeah.
22100. So,
Yeah, true.
sorry.
All right. That'll bring us to our high school pergola installation. This man just Mark will tell us a little bit about
Yeah, so there's a picture on the screen. Hopefully everybody can see it. But we'd like to thank Andrew Riley. He's our student who graduated, what, 2 years ago?
2019, Andrew Riley.
He was the student, started this as a student project, student senior project, and really kind of got the ball rolling and the show on the road for us, raised most of the funds for it. So we'd like to thank Andrew, and that's a final product of his work and his handiwork. And John, I don't know if you want to say anything.
Yeah, just really thank you to come up and talk. Thank you to Andrew in the class of 2019. This was a fun gift. We also got some additional funding. So anyone who participated in the funding across the town, I want to give a shout out to them, express my gratitude on behalf of the high school. And thank you, especially Andrew, for his design work, his fundraising, his patience, because this graduated in 2019. His commitment, follow up. I'll see him through. He zoomed in, I think, from UMass Amherst not too long ago. The school committee to give us an update on the change in the design of the location. It changed from a pergola to a pavilion. And the other thing that this has inspired us as you come by the campus and see this. We think there might be we see the usefulness of having these types of structures throughout the campus, maybe in the back perhaps, and actually going back to the pergola that he originally designed, have that in the back for some little shade recreational area for students and staff to gather while they're looking at an athletic event. So we were definitely inspired by his work, and we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
That's great.
Next, Dr. Fletcher will give us an update on the vaccination clinics.
We are still offering vaccination clinics within our community. We have 2 more, one on May 18th, one on June 8th. They'll both be held at the middle school cafeteria, and they'll be running from 3 to 5 p.m. And then that will be it for the year. And hopefully next year we will not be involved with vaccination clinics at all. I think we're in really good shape in our community with our vax rates, and I'd just like to thank our community for supporting the clinics that we put on, and it was really nice to be able to find a company that was so flexible with us. And we offered probably around 8 or 9 clinics, I guess, this year. So it was something that was necessary, and I'm glad we were able to help out. A few more things to recognize. We'd be remiss not to thank the town and the community for approving our budget at our town meeting. And it's hard to believe it was this week. It was more than a week ago, but it hasn't been. And we also had our funds approved for the feasibility study for Shaker Lake School. So it's a great evening, and very supportive of everything that our town not only does for us, but it certainly invested in education in this town, and it's very fortunate to have community members that understand the importance of public education. So thanks to everybody that was involved in that evening. This is a really exciting time of year for us. We have so many events going on in our schools. Hillary, I don't think has had time to sleep lately. Hillary had a high school spring concert this week. Prior to that, we had the Spring Fest, and that was incredible evening. I couldn't believe how crowded it was. The lineup was so long, and everybody was having a good time. It was a little windy and chilly out, but that certainly didn't have an effect on the evening at all. So congratulations to Shaker Lane PTA and the staff that were involved in putting that on. I had a lot of fun there, and you know, Justin had a lot of fun as well. Thank you, Justin, for helping out.
Heard about a dunk tank?
Oh,
Oh, okay.
That would have been told.
the dunk tank would be great.
Okay.
Maybe next year. Middle school concert was last night, and this evening the high school National Honor Society is celebrating the seniors. So Stella is here this evening, and Brad will be joining us a little later on. And that's it for my acknowledgements this evening, unless the principals have anything else they'd like to add. Sure.
Just to recognize the PTA for their, we have luncheon this week for Teacher Appreciation Week, and that's a really lovely and delicious tradition that we were happy to have back in person this year.
For mentioning that, Cheryl. Jason, are you okay? All right, thank you.
As Dr. Quetchy said, we did get approval for our feasibility study for Shaker Lane. I think that's something really exciting and for the board members to look forward to over the next few years. I'm not sure what's going to happen with Shaker Lane. We'll have a better idea after the feasibility study, but I think it's, whatever it is will be an improvement from what we have now. So very exciting stuff. All right. That brings us to our first presentation on the state of curriculum. We're starting with Steele.
Good evening, everyone. We're happy to bring you the second installment of 3 of the State of the Curriculum addresses this evening. So we will start with Hillary Bridge, who is our curriculum coordinator of arts and music. She will pass it over to David Pasquicci of ELA, who will then pass it off to Mike Stevens of history.
Hi, hello.
Hello.
I'm good. How are you? Good. Great. So I'm always happy to have the opportunity to talk about all the incredible talent that we have in our school. So thank you for having us here. This year, we're very happy to be able to work in person with each other and to make art and to make music together. So we have been very grateful for that. My colleagues and I have all kind of focused on a lot of the same topics this year. So some of the overarching themes that we've all been talking about this year across all the buildings is getting students working collaboratively again. Since they spent a year apart, they have needed a little bit of practice. So we've all been focusing on how to get students working in small groups together. We focused a lot on executive functioning skills, breaking tasks down, and task initiation for students. We also focused a lot on resilience and overcoming some obstacles. But a silver lining of everything that we have all learned is that everybody is better at using technology across all grades, across all levels. So if you've got to find a silver lining, we thought that was a great one. At the elementary level, we have the students in music classes are now able to use instruments together. So that's been very great for the students to get back to making music together. Some of the younger students at Shaker Lane have been working with unpitched percussion, so drums and shakers and those types of things. And the older students have gotten a lot more exposure to melody making with glockenspiels. Shaker Lane has received 24 glockenspiels over the last 2 years. So that's really helped their program grow. A glockenspiel is like a metallic xylophone for people who are wondering.
I was wondering, thank you.
I was trying to jog my memory.
Yeah, I was trying to reference.
I can't call it a xylophone because it isn't one, but that's exactly what they look like.
Thank you.
Sure. And as we heard earlier this year from my colleague TJ Gansenberg, he received an Lef grant for 30 ukuleles at Russell Street. And so the 4th and 5th graders have had a lot of fun learning some new skills and techniques with the ukuleles. And then the 3rd graders at Russell Street got to build and code their own electronic instruments. At the end, I have a short video. You'll be able to see some of the students do that in the video. Art at the elementary level has been very excited to use different mediums this year, now that everybody can share and be together. Also, a lot of really interesting collaborative projects where students are creating art together. And if you go by Russell Street, you'll see that there was an installation of a tiny art gallery right over by the Tiger's Den entrance. You go in there. That was also from the LEF, and there's a lot of really creative, tiny art contained within, and it's from adults, it's from students. It's a very neat little installment, so you should check it out next time you walk by there. Littleton Middle School introduced a new class in the music for keyboard and guitar for grades 7 and 8. All of the bands are happy to be back and performing. The middle school band performed in December and February and yesterday. The chorus is also back and happily performing in their concerts, and they also spent some time caroling at the Senior Center in Littleton. There were also some new keyboards purchased for the 6th grade general music, and art students are continuing to find creative ways to use the technology that we've spent so much time learning while also still being able to make art in person. So they're creating some unique opportunities for students there. At Littleton High School, we have the addition of drama electives. So we are happily welcoming Adam DeCoste to our department, and it's exciting for students. There's a lot of excitement about those classes. Catherine Mcdonough received a gold key and an honorable mention for their painting. You'll be able to see a photo of the painting in the video that's going to play at the end. The art students took a field trip to the Isabella Student Gardner Museum, which was also courtesy of an Lef Grant. There is lots of high school student art that's currently being displayed at the Reuben Fuller Library, and those are on a revolving basis, so you can come back and see new art regularly. In some of the digital art classes, they've spent some time talking about technology tools and learning about NFTs and how those might relate to our future of art and design. We've had some great times at our new concerts. We've been able to continue putting those on. We went to Disney in February. The high school band did, and you'll see a tiny clip of that in the video at the end here. And part of the reason why the video has become a thing is because art and music is great, but nobody wants to hear people talk about art and music. You want to hear the music and see the art. So the video clip, I think, is the best way to demonstrate all of the talent, that just a small portion of the talent that we have in our schools. So just as a quick overview of what the video includes, it's a clip of our Disney performance. There's some pictures of the trip. There's some examples of student work from digital art classes. There's a picture of that painting that received the Scholastic Gold Key. There's an amazing clip of a student film that was created in our film classes. The film's topic is on mental health. We're only going to see about 1.5 minutes of it, but I'm sure John Allen would be happy to show anyone the entire film. There is also some clips of student art at Littleton Middle School, a short video clip of a really neat collaborative drawing exercise that was done at the elementary level, some artwork and a picture of the tiny art gallery, and then the video clips of the 3rd grade music classes creating their electronic music. And then finally, at the end, there's some 1st graders composing using 8th notes and quarter notes. So now we're ready for the video.
Campus are pleased to present the Littleton High School Band from Littleton, Massachusetts, under the direction of Hillary Grant. Please welcome to the Advent Health Waterside stage, the Littleton High School Band.
There are some silent spots.
Yeah, there's sounded some and sounded not. Some digital art. That's the painting. Wow.
Two people. And Maybe that's the key. No, we totally deserve the karma. We're trying here. It looks
Okay, does anyone need help with their video? Alright, let's check these. Do you
Very cool. Looks like there's a lot of fun and interesting stuff going on with the public schools.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Escucci's up next.
Hillary, I just wanted to thank you for applying and receiving those funds, with the LEF, because I know that the money's made available. There's a lot of effort, but you gotta go ahead and get it. And I think there's an appreciation on both sides because the community feels like, you know, there's some good coming of it, and it's nice to see we're implementing some new stuff. So I just want to thank you for bringing those new things into the district.
Sure. Agreed.
Hillary's been with us for
13 years.
13 years now. Yeah. And so Hillary's been able to see our district change and grow. When Hillary first arrived, she was at 3 schools.
I was, yes.
And, teaching students in all 3 schools. And as we continue to grow with our population, we're able to specialize more and brought in a middle school music teacher and another music teacher at the elementary level. So Hillary's been able to focus a little more on high school. So, thank you so much, Hillary.
Thanks again.
By the way, that gorilla was an NFT.
That's cool. That's our hope the last time. I've never heard of an NFT before.
It's all the rage.
I got a guide.
I might.
Gotta get on early. All right. So I'm here to talk a little bit about the English department for grades 6 and 12. Here is just the opening slide with just a few things. You know, we recently just finished National Poetry Month, so we did a lot of poetry. I had a student recently say, "But are we done with poetry?" But no, we do it other months as well. So now that we're in May, it doesn't mean no more poetry. But just a few opening images of the school and some of the faculty and some of the students and just some of their projects, which I'll talk about a little bit more in depth in the following slides. Starting off with some accomplishments, just a quick sample of a few things, some measurables and some things that aren't so easy to measure, but again, you know, the MCAS, the students in Littleton have been doing very well across the grades. This is just one snapshot, and I put up here of the 10th grade MCAS, so students are doing well in other grades, but you know, we've been achieving at a high level, and so many students have been meeting an expectation for several years. So there's not a ton of room for growth, and we're still growing. I think there's still some improvement, which is amazing. So in particular, there were 0% not meeting expectations. So I thought that was really an awesome thing to highlight that accomplishment. Beyond that, something a little bit more fun, students have entered and won honors in several contests for writing, whether it's poetry or essays. Just a few examples here. It's from an annual sports writing contest, and sophomores Jay Kang and Kelly Stella have recently earned honors from the Mcdonough writing contest. So that was something that I wanted to brag about. Some other highlights, Lef Grants, we've earned and been awarded several. Just list them briefly here, but we have teaching cultural competency for literature, expanded independent reading curriculum, so funds for books that might not necessarily be a whole class text, so expanding that, those offerings. Flexible seating, that image in the top right-hand corner is not a baseball cap, that's the flexible seating, because students have some are able to form different groups or different learning dynamics, and that's also been helpful with social distancing and COVID as well. So it serves many purposes, but having some flexibility with grouping and seating is awesome. So those are just some examples of those seats. And then with the help of an LEF grant, we've had essayist and memoirist Beth Richards. She was actually meeting with students on Wednesday, working with Mr. Tom Vino's creative writing students, specifically about writing, but also I think it's great for students to talk to, especially senior students, to talk to a college professor. I think sometimes they talk to recruiters or students that are in college now, but to have a college professor kind of talk to them, I think is a unique and awesome opportunity. So we're glad to have invited her. And some more highlights. These are just so much great work, but just a few exemplars from Ms. Abbott's 8th grade project, which is taught in conjunction with To Kill a Mockingbird. So that's been part of the curriculum for a while, and it works in conjunction with a racism and tolerance unit. And these are just some of the visual examples highlighting some of the themes present also, in the novel, but also in our current society. One-word projects. This is just, again, another example of some of the great work. So Ms. McCook's 9th grade class created one-word reflection projects in order to help students choose a focal point for their academic and personal lives. Everyone here, teachers, have noticed increased levels of stress in our own lives, and especially in our students' lives, and anxiety. So one helpful adjustment has been to incorporate more time for contemplation and reflection in all areas of life. So, these images are just part of the project where students sort of think about a word that has meaning to them, build some intention, and reflect on that. Obviously, academics, but other facets of life, right? So this could apply in many areas of a person's life. So just sort of thinking of a word and thinking about putting an intention out there throughout the year and sort of reaching for that goal, especially when times get tough. Some more professional development, technology. Recently, teachers have attended some group training for the new TouchView interactive panels. We have many of them in our buildings now. So the technologies here and teachers are at very comfort levels. And so we're learning about how to incorporate those into the classroom. And they're similar to some of the smart boards that many of us are familiar with, but they also have a lot more functions than some of the older models. So that's really exciting. So we're excited to incorporate that into our classes. A book study was a teacher-led professional development period where teachers could choose a book, and it could be across content areas. So it could be something that was a group would be reading a book. You could have history teachers, Spanish teachers, English teachers, and reading a book, enjoying it, talking about it, but also having it inform some form of your practice. So, for example, some people were reading books about grammar and writing, but there was lots of other options as well. So thinking about how you can have a book discussion that also develop some lesson ideas and things from that. I just wanted to highlight a comment from, there's lots of comments, but this was one online post from a participant, Margot Gillen. And she wrote, "It was great hearing everyone share that what they are reading, and it's wonderful working with such passionate and devoted teachers, colleagues, and friends. And it's just also fun to hear what other people are reading. So if you're looking for book recommendations, there was a lot of great conversations from that." And that PD utilized the digital tool Padlet, which some people are very familiar with, and some people weren't. So it also incorporated some technology as well. So a nice little mix of sort of the analog of reading an book and using some technology to communicate. Thank you very much.
Awesome, thank you.
Questions from the board for?
I'll go with Franco first.
I see some.
I take notes, yeah. Thank you so much for that. And I think there are always limits about what we can learn from MCAS scores. But those are remarkable. 26% in 2021 at the highest possible level is something the entire system should be congratulated on. So well done. Y'all, I guess and I love to touch the panel. TVs are incredible. My question is, I guess, can you tell us a little bit more about the curriculum options the students have once they get to high school? Like, what are the elective options? What are our choices? They're obviously doing well in the core competencies, but how are we giving them opportunities to grow and kind of push their boundaries?
Great question. So, teachers at the high school, we go to the middle school and talk to the incoming 8th graders and their parents in 2 different settings, but we talk a lot about some of the offerings. And so part of it, we talked a little bit about college prep, honors, distinction, because at the freshman level, there's not as many options, but as the students get older and they progress, there's more and more options. And so we're building in more electives. So some of the electives now, creative writing would be an elective. And we're working on incorporating like a literature and film elective that we've had in the past. So some of the electives work on like a cycle. So we have English 1, English 2, English 3, English 4. And because we can only offer so much, we have some of the electives more on a cyclical kind of nature. And so sometimes we will revise that and add stuff, but we've had several electives, and we also have the VHS. So sometimes that's also an elective option for certain students.
So what are some of the English or Lit options through VHS for them?
I haven't taught for a while, but for example, in the past, I've done like Shakespeare and literature. So that's something I've done in the past. So I'm not sure about all the offerings off the top of my head, but that would have been like one option that I've taught myself in years past. So later, so Shakespeare and film. Sometimes certain AP at the upper level. So, for example, we usually just do English. We do the AP language, not AP literature, or we'll flip-flop that. We'll change that. So, like 1 year we're offering AP Lit, another year we're offering AP languages because school isn't large enough to have both of those running. So that's kind of what I mean by like the cyclical kind of nature.
That makes sense. I have one more question, if that's all right. Sure. I see a lot of our students, or high school students, after they've made it to the college level, and sometimes I'm really impressed with their writing and their research abilities, and sometimes I'm not. What are we doing to prepare our students to do kind of independent research within the ELA curriculum? Do we have research paper requirements or any of that?
So that's a great question. Well, I was going to answer one thing with just writing in general, and I'll talk about the research. In general, one thing I do in my classroom is I look at what some of the professors are complaining about. And so, for example, there's a nice little resource from Hamilton College, which was great. And they basically are talking about some of their pet peeves or what they see from incoming freshmen, which is different than college freshmen, which is different than like a 10th grader or what have you. So that's sort of one thing, is sort of looking at what they're looking for, what their expectations are. So that's one way to sort of set goals for that. As far as the research paper goes, we do not, the English department does not necessarily at this time have a research paper requirement. Like, you do every year, my older brother did it, your cousin did it, so that's something that's not there. So it's a little bit more on an individual basis, but I would say that by the senior year, they've written research papers, but it might not be called the research paper. And I would also just add that there's been a shift towards a lot more nonfiction reading. Not that you can't write a research paper on fiction, but there's been a great deal of reading nonfiction, which I think helps, kind of goes hand in hand with some of the research. And then the last thing I'll say is, researching has changed quite a bit, just the resources. I mean, we're not necessarily you know, a lot's changed with those resources. So I think it's important to teach certain skills, but not necessarily be too reliant on certain tools because some of those things can change so quickly. But having students be comfortable researching something and integrating their evidence, I think that's the real focus. And I think one thing we also talk a lot about is plagiarism, because I think, you know, plagiarism, there's one form of plagiarism where it's like, you know, you bought it online, something that's illegal. And then but there's also plagiarism where it's like you obviously didn't intend to perhaps violate certain expectations. So there's a little bit more of that.
It's more improper citation,
exactly,
or taking without attribution.
Yeah. And I would say there's a little bit more emphasis that on certain levels, age groups, and that sort of thing. Whereas depending on what you want to do after school, after your high school career, that might be more important than other paths.
Thank you so much for that. For the record, I very much like this approach better than the big research paper, which makes it's a one-off thing you do at once.
Right.
I really like
the approach. It's more broken down.
Thank you.
Next up, like the students.
All right, well, good evening. I already made a note to make sure that next year I sign up before both of those. Sure, nobody envies me having followed both of that. So yeah, thank you for allowing me to come in to the State of the Curriculum for the History and Social Science Department for 2021 and 2022 school year. Just the opening slide here, we have some students who are on that's at the Bulletin Historical Society, who have assisted with a couple of the different projects that they've been doing throughout the town. On the right, we've been able to collaborate, a little bit of a return to normalcy, if you will, within our classrooms, which has been welcomed tremendously, dearly. And in the middle, we've been able to have some more debates, which I'll touch upon again. That's from the Mcdonough debates, which one of our high school student teachers runs every year, and it is a huge highlight for us. So some more highlights for us. Some generous grants were awarded by the LEF to Facing History and Ourselves, giving students the opportunity to speak to survivors of genocide. We look at primary sources every single day in the history curriculum and almost all of our classes, but to actually be able to hear these primary sources from the Holocaust, from the Cambodian genocide of the 1970s, and from the Bosnian genocide of the 90s, these are events that students will forever remember. That will leave lasting impressions on them, that they'll be able to go out and make differences in the world with, because they've been able to be impacted by that. Last year, we were able to successfully implement the civics projects at LHS and the civics curriculum at the 8th grade. In the high school level, we actually did a couple of different things. We advocated for better mental health situations within the high school, and one of the best ways we did that was through advocating for a therapy dog. Archie, who is now there every single day. He is the unofficial school mascot. I'm just speaking for myself, but he is a welcome addition to the high school. And for another class, what we did, students were advocated for debt-free tuition to public universities and colleges in Massachusetts. They wrote letters to all of the state representatives and state senators and heard back from over 20 about why they took the positions that they did. Speaking about research projects, we researched both of these issues intimately and went very far in depth with them. For the students to be able to research something which they really care about and that they are incredibly passionate about, there's no better way for them to conduct research, without a doubt, believe. I'm a big fan of autonomy and not having the state dictate what teachers do, but I'm very happy that this was put in place. It was a rewarding experience for all. Again, speaking of some normalcy, we had some field trips. The first to the Edward M. Kennedy Institute. Susan Harvey wanted me to make sure that I thank the PTA tremendously for this, as they provided the opportunity for students to go and act as senators for the day. Their favorite activity there was learning about gerrymandering and how that affects different districts and how they're drawn. You can see that with certain elections that have happened recently in the United States, especially in the state of Ohio. They also were able to replicate a Senate debate. And being able to go on that field trip, I was lucky enough to attend to, again, see the passion of students and get to act as senators and choose which state they wanted to represent was tremendous. Students also went to the Massachusetts State House and they met with Representative Arciero, and there was a monuments and memorials walking tour of Boston with basic history and ourselves as well. We've also added AP macroeconomics at the high school level. The students just took their AP macro test today. If any of them are watching, I hope that when you were in doubt, you grabbed it out and that you did not overthink anything. We've continued to strengthen the growth of the project-based learning and universal design for learning across all grade levels. I'll touch upon that in another slide. And before we move on, one other thing that I forgot to add, in addition to our partnership with Middlesex Community College, we are now offering dual enrollment at the high school level in U.S. History too. And there's a cohort of students who are taking that and are doing well in that as well. So for professional development, one of the things that teachers have at the high school level have really taken upon themselves is to prepare for the implementation of State Bill 2557, which is an act concerning genocide education at both the high school and the middle school level. This is something that we already do at both levels and that we pride ourselves in being able to do, and we're very excited in being able to expand this curriculum. We're looking really at focusing on the 6th and 7th grade level because those are the more history-based courses for implementing this further at the middle school level. At the high school level, students are exposed to this again in just about every class that they take. For universal design for learning, I do not want to steal the thunder of Joseph Dennis, who will be here in a couple of weeks to speak about a lot of the professional development that he has done. But if you see those origami pieces on the board, that is one of the universal design for learning projects that he's done with 7th grade students. When learning about ancient Japan and the cultures and civilization there, they were afforded the opportunity to do calligraphy, of writing their own name in calligraphy, creating a haiku, or creating pieces of origami of animals which are from Japan, and many of them created things far better than I could ever imagine. We have had training sessions on new classroom technology, which Dave stole from me, so we'll skip past that. Specifically the touch views, which are tremendous, and I think we all love using. Again, with the book studies as well, some of the books which teachers in the history department chose to take a closer look at was America for Americans and Rising Out of Hatred, which is a story from a former white nationalist and how he got caught up within the movement and then how he was able to break away and taking a look at it from a third perspective. We've also had a teacher who looked at learning to code photos, visit secret archives for a new version of history. This was done by one of our teachers at the high school, specifically through the Holocaust, England's Holocaust National Holocaust Museum. There we go. Another teacher took oppositional, aggressive, attention-seeking, and uncooperative children, teens, and young adults in order to better understand students and their the struggles that they're going through today and how to best adapt for the some of the behaviors that we may encounter within the classroom. I was also lucky enough to attend the AP Summer Institute this summer. While it was done online, it was one of the great PEs that I've done. It really helped when preparing the students for the test this year. And we have another teacher who is getting ready to take that this summer in preparation for AP Psychology, which we are taking back from the science department and making hours once again. Some of the adaptations to instruction and learning that we've noticed, we've really placed an emphasis on executive functioning skills, especially at the middle school level, with increased binder checks in order to make sure that students are keeping a well-organized binder and that they're able to stay on top of their work and know exactly where it is. I'm sure we've all seen the collection of papers that some students may have, and passing a paper that is just a ball. We're trying to discourage that and get away from it, and that we're doing a really good job. Teachers also have an incredible amount of printouts that are incredibly organized, being able to supply students with anything that they might be missing. One of the middle school teachers who told me about this, Dustin Bordeaux, our new 6th grade teacher, was saying how every unit is colored with the color that they get and numbered and lettered as well, so they know exactly where it should be in order and exactly what they are missing. Students have taken an increased interest in current events, and connections are being made to the curriculum at all levels. This is especially being done in global studies at the high school level. As you can see, anything that's going on in the world today, these are hot button issues that students are studying, and that they have a safe place where they can come in and they can discuss them. And then for the civics curriculum at the 8th grade, this is also a tremendous place for them to be able to have these discussions about what is going on in the world. And I don't think you have to look too far and to see some issues that students can have excellent debates and be able to discuss these issues amongst one another in a safe and regulated place. We've also increased social emotional check-ins with students following vacations to make sure that they had good vacations and what we would be able to do for those who maybe did not. So for some of our students, school is the safest place for them, is where they feel the most at home when vacations can be difficult. So being able to have these check-ins has helped tremendously. And to steal a line from the 1920 president, in 1920, Warren G. Harding, on World War I, we've been able to return to normalcy. We've had the ability to have much more fun within the classroom and adapt to lessons so that they best fit our students' learning styles. Not that all teachers did not make tremendous accommodations and did not do their best throughout the pandemic, but to be able to have our students in front of us and to be able to work with them, again, it is tremendous. We have these debates, simulations, and these actual face-to-face interactions have been great as well. One other thing I'd like to add to that too, and just kind of touching upon what Dave was talking about earlier, we do have an extensive research paper and project at the high school level, and a lot of our students work with their English and with the history teachers in order to do better with that. It is broken up into many stages, so it's not just all one rec paper, do all at once. And students are exposed to this throughout their freshman projects at freshman level, again, for their junior level and bigger papers in their sophomore and junior years as well. So thank you.
Great spread.
I mean, whatever you don't touch, we'll pick up.
I ran for school committee so I can ask questions about history curriculum. No, this is great. And I'm so glad that the new teaching about genocide mandate's pretty broad. So I'm really glad we already have that in place, and the way you're talking about throughout the system is fantastic. It's one of the best examples I've heard. I'm curious about a couple of things. One is the dual enrollment US2 class. Is that taught by one of our teachers here? Okay.
Yeah, it's taught by Ryan Walsh for US2.
All right, great. And so we coordinate with Middlesex. I mean, just the mechanics of that. Do they approve the syllabus? Okay.
Exactly. They approve the syllabus. They approve the teacher.
Yeah.
They make sure that the materials are up to par with their materials. That the students are doing the work that they would do if they were to go to a Middlesex US2 class.
So what is it's the question I think we've had before, is as we think about students who might choose AP or choose an actual college class, what's the dynamic within the department? Do we have students choosing between the two, or
yes? Yeah, so that typically happens by their junior or senior year, and by that point, we're very lucky that we have a small department in some regards. We want to grow the department as well, but we have a really good feel for our students by that point, and they have a really good feel for us and our teaching styles as well. So being able to work with our students and to decide which course might be best for them and what they want to pursue, I think. Again, by being able to build those relationships and those connections, we're lucky that we teach in the community that we do. It allows us that advantage to help them guide them in the right direction. That and our guidance department's tremendous as well.
Great. I'm so glad they have those options and that we can give them to them. I guess my final question is the kind of elephant in the room. There's a lot of angst in our community and in the broader the nation about critical race theory, about teaching about divisive topics. We see legislation in 20-something different states about this. Can you explain to us and then to the wider community maybe a little bit about how we choose kind of what to teach and maybe the approaches we take? Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. We don't really get to choose what to teach. We do for, in some regards, but the Massachusetts curriculum frameworks, they're pretty, I don't want to say rigid, but they're outlined pretty well. And I know you have a pretty intimate knowledge of them. They're there for a reason, and they help guide us in what we teach, and they provide excellent resources for what we should use within the classroom that a lot of our teachers do use as well. I think in answering the bigger question as a whole, when it comes to these divisive topics, the history department, we really look at it as our responsibility to not impose our opinions on students, but to help them learn how to create their own opinions and how to have productive conversations with people who maybe don't see eye to eye with them, rather than creating a very polarized, conversations that we see happening all the time, right? If anybody has the phone, you can just go on Twitter right now, or Instagram or any other social media platform and see these. Again, we feel it's like our burden to be the steward of the students being able to think for themselves and to think critically. So whether it's critical race theory or some of the new Supreme Court rulings or any other laws that have been brought up in different states, whether they be our own and others, it's important for our students to learn not just what they are, but how they affect them and how they affect our community as a whole.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
Got well done. I would just add that this is to all three presenters. Thank you very much. I'm always just so impressed. It's nice to hear from the administration. It's really nice to hear the nuts and bolts of what goes on, and it's always so well thought out. The presentations are excellent. I'm very impressed with sort of the depth and breadth of the curriculum that's covered. So I would almost like to hear like a mid-year check-in, like we get to hear this twice a year. It's always so good. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Mike, I have a question for you. Sure. I mean, we're all concerned about student stress and the politics that are going on throughout the nation and what's happening in the world. I'm sure some of our students are experiencing increased stress as a result of trying to unpack what's happening. In your department, have you noticed that? And if so, what do you do to help students better understand what's happening and also cope with all of the unknowns that are out there this time?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have noticed that within our department, and I think any of the teachers who are here or any of the teachers in our school district can attest that they've noticed this angst and these feelings of stress around certain topics that do affect them. We go about it in a couple of different ways. I think, again, one of the great things that we've done or that we've been able to do is really morph that mandate from the state of teaching civics to teaching students advocacy skills and students to advocate for themselves. So while a decision may be made that affects a student, how they can advocate to change that or to, if something isn't there that protects students or protects how they feel or any student's gender or their gender identity, or sexual orientation and race, anything else, their ethnicity or religion, that they feel empowered to be able to fight for that. So I think those are our best ways of showing students that they're not alone, that they have other people, maybe not always in our town, but in communities around or throughout the country that are also affected by these and that they can help with that.
Can I ask one follow-up question, I guess, for the ELA and the social studies? I know the new social studies, the 2018 social studies curriculum frameworks have emphasis on media literacy, and we're talking about research in both areas. It seems to be one of the most important skills we can help our students develop is the ability to evaluate all of these sources out there. Are there things we're doing very intentionally about teaching media literacy?
Yeah, actually, one of the last things that I did on one of the last quizzes I gave, my students had a quick check-in. This wasn't a part of the quiz, it was just a different informal assessment about media literacy. The Stanford History Educational Group, So for a history teacher that may be out there that's not aware, it is a tremendous free resource that has, these resources are created by Stanford's history department themselves. They have created a plethora of sources about media literacy, whether it be reading your uncle's argument on Facebook and how to properly address him about that, or fact checking something that is put on Twitter. So yeah, intentionally, this is happening throughout our department all the time. I'm sure throughout ELA. So
that's great. The Stanford resource, that's the gold standard. So
yeah,
that's great.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. That pulls us up to, we're going to have Charles Temple and Michelle Kane come up, give us an update on the school improvement plan highlights for Shaker Lane and Russell Street.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Just the admin now.
During our budget presentation, we had an opportunity to take a look at the district's accomplishments and the school's accomplishments as part of the presentation. But we really thought it was important that the principals had an opportunity to talk about their plans. And also, this is the end of the improvement plan for the last 2 years, and we're developing the improvement plans in the fall.
we'll take the next slide. And I'll talk for a couple of minutes. And principal Temple will. So as Superintendent Clenchey mentioned, a lot of this is review, but we spoke about this. Mrs. Steele has spoken about it. Dr. Clenchey has spoken about it. Some of the things that we've done at Schcmte for cultural and community outreach are community meetings, which would be both this slide and the next slide that I'll talk about briefly. Our community meetings really focus on supporting the students' social and emotional supports. As Dr. Clenchey spoke and staff member before me, we really focus on that in our students. So we read a lot of books with the kids. I think I've spoken about this earlier this year. We read a book called Happy in Our Skin. The kids decorated a little person that looked like them, different colors, different shades. They used paper, they used crayon, they used art decorations, and we hung a bulletin board in our hallway. We also had the Great Kindness Challenge. We recently read If You Plant a Seed. It was about kindness. Kids each got a little flower petal, and they talked about how they would plant a seed, and that's our current bulletin board right now. We just read this week, which our families will find out tomorrow when we send our newsletter out, that the students listen to the story Ordinary Mary's Extraordinary Deed and how kindness can spread. And the kids are going to be getting in a couple of days kindness coins, and their job is to pass that kindness coin on to somebody else because that person did something kind for them. So our idea is to get the kindness coins flowing around the building. Monthly book readings I've talked about before. This month's book is called The Color of Us. It's a really cute book about a little student who talks about my skin looks like cinnamon, my mom's skin looks like light yellow brown, like creamy peanut butter, my friend's skin looks like peachy tan. And the student goes through the whole book talking about the different colors of her friends. And then at the end, she said, look, Mom, these are the colors of us. And then she has painted a picture of all her friends. A book earlier this year we read was called Your Name is a Song. And this was about a little student whose teacher couldn't say her name. So her mom said, well, let's try and sing it and see if you can sing it for the teacher. And the kids were like, well, my name's kind of different. So they just call me like Mish instead of Michelle or whatever the kid's name is. So there are a lot of connections with these books, especially our students of different backgrounds, diverse backgrounds. So like, well, the kid looks like me in the book. We read a book called You Are Enough, which was written by a student with Down syndrome, an actual student with Down syndrome, and had pictures of her at the end and talked about how she's enough, you're enough. And another book we read was Nana Akua Goes to School, which is one of my favorites. It was about a little girl whose grandma was from Africa, and she had tribal markings on her face, and she went and introduced herself to the class and talked about how her tribal markings are no different than someone who has tattoos. And of course, that was a great conversation with the kids because we heard all about their family's tattoos and where they are and what they are. So they're great books that Rupert Steeken, the assistant principal, and I have picked for the kids to really create a little more diversity in our books. And I think the kids will really enjoy this. So the teachers sign up for these monthly readings. I'll just briefly go through the other ones. The bulletin boards I just talked about. We did partner with Anton's Cleaners to collect coats for kids this year. We collected over 130 coats. And at the end of the month, we have our kindergarten ambassadors program starting. And this year, our school council created a kindergarten ambassadors program where we have asked current kindergarten families to partner up with incoming kindergarten families to do a tour, frequently asked questions, because we find that they are the most anxious sending their little babies to school. So this was a great connection to our community. We also are starting a grade 1 and 2 buddy family program where we will be matching new families, because every now and then we get a handful of first graders or second graders and the families don't know much about it. So we have asked parents this year to do a survey asking them to volunteer to be a buddy family. So we'll be matching those up at the end of this year and then again in August when we have some more new families. So those are 2 great community outreach programs that came out of our school council. The Connections Program Workshop, I'm not going to steal Mrs. Steele's thunder, but that is a great community outreach program she'll talk about in just a little bit. We have some staff members at Schcmte that will be presenting on topics that she'll talk about. And we partnered with the M.H. Kimball Foundation. The outdoor classroom is starting with us, so we're really excited about that. We put the grant in right before the shutdown. We're acknowledged to have the grant before the shutdown, and it now will be happening 2 years later. So hopefully that will be in place by the end of the summer. We partner with the students at the high school, the student interns. We also partnered with the Junior National Honor Society at the middle school as well this year. And most recently, we just partnered with Keller Williams Merrimack Valley and Premier Mortgage Lending for some additional supplies for our outdoor classroom.
The next slide has some social emotional supports. I know we've talked a lot about this year, so I apologize for the repetitiveness. We do social thinking lessons with our school adjustment counselor, morning meeting, closing circle. Our school-wide program, Second Step, is taught in every classroom. Our heart jars is a great way for the students to show heart, honesty, effort, acceptance, respect, and taking responsibility. A couple of things I haven't talked about too much are small group and lunch sessions. That's been going on for quite some time before I even came to Chamberlain, and we're really working on targeting those sessions right now with our school adjustment counselor, Ms. Diaco. Classroom read-alouds, the teachers are doing classroom read-alouds that focus on social emotional supports. This year we started with a daily positive affirmation, and we decided to change it to a weekly positive affirmation for the students to really stop and think in the morning of the positive affirmation. I think it was just changing too quick for them. And so I really wanted them to say, this is what I believe. And so every day on the morning announcements, we say, this week's positive affirmation is, I believe in myself and my abilities. So I will say it and we'll say it together. And we use that thread every morning, all week long. So I really like that. Mindful practice, we have staff doing Mindful Mondays. We're going to start building that in school-wide next year as well with our BCBA, Ms. Sapp. She's got some great ideas for some mindful practices. As I talked about, we did the kindness challenge. That was really neat. We had some different challenges that day. Monday, give a compliment to someone. Tuesday, thank an adult in school for something they do. Wednesday, play with someone new at recess. Thursday, write a nice note or make a nice picture for someone. And Friday was High Five Friday. Give high fives all day. The kindness points I talked about, student and parent check-ins, we do that a lot more, I think this year than we have in the past, but more so for the positive check-ins because we, Dr. Fletcher, we were talking at an admin council meeting, it's like, no, we're reaching out to those parents for those kudos and that they're doing a good job. So we've been reaching out to parents to really focus in on, all the hard work that the kids are doing. And I know we've talked a lot about social emotional and the kids not knowing stuff, but I was recently looking at some data that talks about the challenges that our kids are facing right now is more executive functioning challenges than anything because they haven't been taught how to do things. So in looking at that data, I want to talk with our leadership team next year and how can we structure in some more supports for executive functioning in addition to the anxiety and all that other stuff. That was an interesting read. And Mrs. Temple and I both had an anti-bullying presentation from the BMX rider, Matt Wilhelm. That was really neat where he disappeared. That was like fascinating for the kids to watch that. I think we both sent it home in our newsletter as well. And the kids, he does have an anti-bullying message in the video that he showed. And then recently, Lynn Snow has brought in our referral program for Care Solos, which is another support for families who need. I'm going to pass that on to Ms. Temple.
More social emotional learning. One of the goals that we had at Russell Street was around social emotional learning for this year. We were able to, as many of the people have said, it's really nice to be able to go back to the real, true elementary things that had gone away for a couple of years. So, to have teachers have their kids gather for morning meeting and the closing meeting of the day has really been lovely. And that started off at the very beginning of the year. And just it seems like this basic thing, the morning meeting, but so much is covered during that time. We had scheduled social emotional learning blocks in our schedule, so our teachers can work on second step, but they could also work on something that might be coming up in their class, for example. Mrs. Romano, the assistant principal, and I also really wanted to have some focus with our staff and be able to, when we talk about social emotional learning and trauma and all of the things that kind of went along with the pandemic, we realized that the adults in our building are affected as well. And so we really focused our staff meetings on having group discussion with people. That had gone away. We were doing all of our staff meetings on the screen and everyone was in their little box. And even when you go into breakout rooms and things like that, it wasn't really the same as, pulling together in a group. And so our focus for the entire year was to have different configurations within our staff meeting time to have discussion questions or focus on, reading an article about trauma-informed instruction and having discussion. So that has been really nice to be able to get everybody back together. and those kinds of groups. So focused on staff meeting discussions about a variety of topics. We have the book a day program at our school. Starla Hazen does a great job putting books together for all the classrooms and rotating them through. And so that's similar to what Michelle was saying. There's just a variety of topics. The anti-bullying presentation that Wilhelm that we had, our lunch bunch groups that Rachel Layton runs went back in session this year in full force. And so students that want to meet in a small group and have lunch are able to do that. We reconfigured our cafeteria seating several times. We realized that that's kind of this social time for kids. At the beginning of the year, we still were doing contact tracing. Funny, I forgot the word, contact tracing. And so we had assigned seating for a while in the cafeteria, and when we were able to move away from that, there was several different kind of configurations, and all the way to now where we're in brand new long rectangular tables where kids can sit in large groups. So that has worked out really nicely. And so we're really pleased with kind of the configuration of the cafeteria now. We have a continuation of our Stripes initiative, which is focuses on safety, taking responsibility, respect, integrity, perseverance, and empathy, similar to HEART at Russell Street at Shaker Lane. That has continued, although I haven't been very good at taking down the board, so there's lots of stripes everywhere. And then our return to in-person events and activities. When we were thinking that, this maybe wasn't a major impact until they come back and you see how great they are. And then they're like, oh yeah, everyone did miss that. So we've had 2 in-person book fairs. One is happening right now this week at Russell Street. The Arbor Day celebration for 3rd grade. They all got their little tree saplings last Friday, and that was lovely. High Five Friday. Thank you to the Littleton Police Department. I can't speak. I was having dinner with Dr. Ayrton tonight, and we were talking a little bit about this intern program, and I just can't speak. I have to say it. Thanks to Keith Cabral as well for putting that together, assistant principal at the high school. But we have the most amazing high school students that come to our school. And I was saying to one of the high school seniors today, he just popped in and said how sad he was that he only has a couple weeks left. And I asked him if he knew that one of the students that he worked with was struggling to come to school. And he said, no. And I said, because he doesn't struggle to come on the days you're here. And it's lovely. Just love, like there's a few times I've been eating my lunch and I look outside and, there's 2 little 4th graders tossing a football with a high school kid, and they just have these huge smiles on their faces, and I've wanted to sneak a photo out the window. So that's just a wonderful, wonderful program that I hope will continue, for years and years. We have an upcoming live this year art show on May 20th. Our outdoor classroom was, we used a lot this year and continue to use. Our playground spaces are wide open. We're all back in the library. Potato Hill Poetry has come. We've had in-house presentations that have been really great as well. My other goal, or our goal, Andrea's and I, were really this year, we knew that we were going to have to meet students where they are, how they came to us. And one of the really big concerns that teachers had going into the beginning of the year when they started to lead their classes was the pacing. And, typically, 3rd grade gets together with other 3rd grade teachers and they're like, where are you? Where are you? And they try to be right around the same area within, a lesson or 2 or 3. And we realized that pacing was going to be really challenging with some classes. And so we just had to put that aside, right? And say, your class is your class and you need to do what you need to do to get those kids through. And so it's been a little bit of a challenge, and I think we're kind of getting closer and closer together. But I feel like teachers felt like the lessons were a little bit farther apart at the beginning of the year, and we're kind of working our way. So that has been good. We really have Rachel Layton has done a great job with the SST student support team at Russell Street. Really making sure that that teachers are able to come to the team and talk about student needs, and so we can plan for them. Our interventions, obviously, through Title I, and then just generally in the building. I had made notes that, when you talk about interventions, there's the absolute like interventions like Title I, but also it was not unusual, and I'm sure Beth can attest to this, to just be walking through the building and see a small group of kids sitting at a table in the hallway with a teaching assistant going over something. And that was really lovely to have back this year too. Those little meeting things that happen at tables here and there. And so we really made sure that when students felt uncomfortable with things, that we really tried to intervene and assist. Obviously, we've talked a lot about our MAP testing and the Acadians testing, and that's real-time data for teachers. As soon as the test is over, they have real-time data on where their kids are and what they need to go back and work on some more and what the kids have mastered. So that has been really wonderful. And I can't speak highly enough of our Title I supports and how they just really work collaboratively. Brad's writing. I have a really funny riddle, and I'm not going to share it with you if you ask me too many questions. I'm just not going to.
I've got questions.
I'm teasing. And so I was saying about our Title I have really worked collaboratively with the classroom teachers and have been able to help out, really work on sort of strategies together with them. So that has been really nice. Universal design for learning. Everybody tonight has mentioned that, and that's something that we've talked about a lot in staff meetings. When you are meeting kids where they are, giving them choice in how they do things is really key, and that's what UDL is all about. There's been lots of classroom rewards. There's little, little stone jars or little feed jars in the classrooms, and lots of times the classroom reward. In my day, I remember it was like ice cream or pizza parties. It's pajama day. It's constantly a pajama day at Russell Street somewhere. So there's lots of pajama day rewards. We had Spirit Week, which was really just a fun activity week for the kids. Teachers have also implemented teacher lunch groups. So that some of the teachers will, ask kids to sign up, and kids will check out of the cafeteria and go and have lunch in the classroom with their teacher from time to time. And lots of special activities. One of the a third grade class, for example, has once a month they have a birthday recess where they go out and they just spend a few extra minutes playing, but it's to celebrate all the students that month that had a birthday. So those activities are back, and we're really enjoying them. Andrea and I have really made sure that and we have been visible in our building, as several of you can attest. Most days, 99.9% of the time, I might just be running out the door, but I'm out there when the bus and the cars come through. And we've really tried to be out front, to meet the kids every day, to wave to the families in the cars every day. The dogs are always amazing. That's always my fun part of the day, to see everyone's dog. And really so the kids know that we're there. They know every single morning that we're standing in front, and we say bye to them every afternoon as well. We are in the cafeteria every single day unless we have an admin council meeting. And it's been really great to just kind of go sit with a group of kids and talk about, what's going on, how are you feeling today? And really kind of talk about the Celtics and talk about the Patriots and things like that. And what are you doing? And so that has been just really kind of a nice thing. That's not new for us, but I felt like this year it was more important than ever to really, manage individual needs of kids. And sometimes we're the ones managing that, right? Do you need a break? Do you need a walk? Do you want to come and, play magnetic darts with me? And for some kids, they want to do that. So that's great. We were, it was really nice too to be invited to classes, and that's typical to be invited in to see, but it was really fun. I was invited, I think I mentioned this already, to some third grade classes to listen to persuasive essays. Some of them wanted, one of the classes wanted to be able to add some magazines to their classroom library, and that was really great, and we were able to do that. The other class wanted vending machines. We weren't able to do that, but it was fun to listen to their essays. A fifth grade classroom invited me, and they were reading their stories, which was really creative. The teacher had made a campfire, and it was in the middle of the room, and the kids were sitting around the campfire as if they were camping. And she had, the little holiday blinky lights in there, and the room was dark, and the kids read with a flashlight like you would at camp. And it was really just an awesome. They were going to read their essays anyways, but that was a really cool cool way to do it. And I was pleased to be invited. And in fourth grade, I went in to watch the science experiments, you know, the basic light bulb in the battery, but man, when they get it to work, it's exciting and they love it. So it's really fun to be involved and talk to kids about that. So that's just a few of the things that we've worked on in terms of meeting kids where they are. Yeah. So in the next slides, I'll just say I don't know if there's anything that you plan on highlighting. All of these slides and all of this information has been presented already by Mrs. Steele a bit ago. I think a couple of things that the writing curriculum is certainly one that's important to highlight. We had 6 days of professional development in-house, thanks mostly to Mrs. Steele and her efforts, but that has been really great to have in-house teams working together, and 6 whole days of it where the teachers worked together and planned what they were going to do, and they went back into the classroom and they did it. So that was really awesome. And I think the other thing worth mentioning, and that maybe talking about it later, is that we are in the process of conducting the elementary math curriculum review. So that's important to note. And the UDL, as people have mentioned already. On the next slide, around professional development, we've talked about this already. The continued practice, learning and discussions on cultural proficiency and trauma-informed instruction. I think that's been really important this year, in addition to all those other things. And certainly the focused district PD on universal design for learning with CAS. On the next slide, I talked already about it, but to mention again, the high school mentor intern program has been really great. And people had mentioned along, we always recognize our PTAs for, they're just wonderful. Our teachers go to PTA and ask for funding for things, and they're like super generous. All the families are super generous, and they really want to make sure that our kids have enriching experiences at school. And I while this is not listed up there, I would say the same for LEF and the grants. It's a little bit more challenging for teachers to write the grant, but most often the teachers get these grants and they do amazing things with the funding that they get. I know in my school, and I'm sure in yours, teachers are really creative about the things that they want to do, and it's fantastic that LEF offers the funding for those opportunities to do those things. Yeah, we talked about this. Yeah, and I think the only thing to add is that we were able in both buildings to have parent volunteers back in the building, and that was really that's always really great too, that people are willing to come and do that. We've talked a lot about the technology, and you've seen a lot of presentations, the Adaptations program, Cross-Curricular Projects. We have the Can-Do Island Challenge. Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. Can-Do Island.
Yeah. So can I just say,
sure,
really cute, 30 seconds. In the kindergarten classroom today, they had to make something that would get the vegetables to the cabin with whatever projects. This is kindergarten. The stuff that they came up with was really cool. So it's about these children that are on an island and they have to figure out how to survive, how to make shoes when their shoes break down or they get wet. And so the kindergarten students, I was in there with Mrs. Bell's class today, and they were making their little contraptions. One kid made something that put around his neck to carry the vegetables to the garden. Another one made a backpack. Some made little purses. It was really cute. So I think every grade level is just, they have their own different type of challenge. This was one of many in kindergarten. This is the one the classroom chose. So I know Mrs. McGregor's put a lot of work in the Can-Do Island STEM challenge. So we're excited about that. Really cool.
It's a lot. You've done a lot.
Let's dive into your list.
I feel like I'm being judged.
It's okay, Brad.
No, I really enjoy these presentations, as Justin was saying earlier, and I learn a lot from them, but they do raise questions. One is, I really love, first of all, hearing about the books, Schcmte, and how we're being intentionally inclusive, making sure all of our students feel welcome. And I really like that, especially the idea, I think you said it came from the Parent Advisory Council, maybe of the buddy families, and stuff. I wonder if, since part of my job here is with CPAC as well, is there a way we can include CPAC in that? If or just make sure the new families know, especially if they might have a student in the 504 IEP, that we can really connect them with the liaisons. Are we intentional about that as well?
So I can. So one of the charges for the school council this coming week is to come up with a frequently asked questions list to hand off to our kindergarten ambassadors that could also be used for the buddy families, and we can add that in, certainly.
I think we can really appreciate that. In CPAC, we're always trying to make sure that there are formal networks of getting information, but also the informal things are in place too. Because sometimes you just want to ask another parent about what's going on.
I would think, may I add to that? I think too, when we do the transitions, when we do like parent orientations, we tend to schedule, I do anyways, I have a time prior to the regular orientation time that if parents that have a child on an IEP want to come prior to the general gathering, because they might have a specific question that they feel more comfortable asking outside of the general meeting. So I tend to have a meeting specific to that and then the general meeting. And that's to just help if they, where is my kid, a specific question to their particular child as they move up to the building.
Great. Thank you so much for that. Other questions. We talked about the map testing and providing kind of real-time information. This may not be a question for this presentation, but maybe one for us later. I know earlier in the year, we heard about map testing, I believe especially about math in the earlier grades. And that was one of the areas where, compared year to year to other things, where there was a gap, not extremely significant, but there was a gap. And again, maybe not now, but at some point, I wonder if you could just let us know how, to what degree we've been able to catch up with previous years or not. So that's just something I think we'd probably be interested in hearing. Not to put you on the spot now. I guess my final question then is I think Dr. Clunchy mentioned this is kind of the end of this plan process. So what's the process for creating a new plan? Like if this is the culmination of something that you've been working towards and working with for the last couple of years, how do we go about as a school leadership team or as a school community making new plans for these schools?
So I'll say in that, I don't know if your plan may be a little bit different. I know in our plan, when we went over there's some things in the plan that even in the course of the years, and even though we added another year, some of the things are still ongoing.
Sure.
So some of the things are complete and you check that off and then you try to replace that with something else. And the ongoing things you figure out how you're gonna, like what steps you want to take going forward to either adapt that or how you can get it to completion. So that's really how we update the plans for the next period of time. Add new things, figure out what's done, and figure out, what you want to.
Yeah, that's always the problem. I guess that's always the process. You check some boxes, that's always going to be the goal to keep for these areas. I guess my question is, who's involved in making those plans? Is it the administrative team itself? Is there parent input? Is there?
So we've done that with school council. So there's parents and teachers and administrators involved on that.
Thank you.
What we start with, Raz, we start with the district strategic plans, which has the district's goals, and then we tailor them down to our goals as we see fit.
With parent and community feedback.
Correct.
That's
so
perfect.
These are developed in the school council meetings. So for example, the math curriculum, we started it this year, but next year is going to be an analyzation on how did it go, what was the pilot. So that's one that will carry on with the buddy program. I think, that's great. We're just getting it off, but it won't actually happen until the summer. So that will be next year's plan. But it's really taking the district schools and tailoring it down to our school.
I really like the buddy program. So thank you. That's all.
And it's a reflective process, and we look at what's been done within an SIP. And one of the questions we ask is it something that has become inculcated in what happens in the school? If it's something that we feel very strongly about, we may not be ready to drop that particular strategy or continue it on. We've worked very hard to create reprints rather than blueprints in our district because a reprint allows you to adjust the plan you need to. So even though we have a 2-year plan, which was a 3-year plan because of the pandemic, we always have the luxury of going back and saying, what's going on here? There's a void here that we really need to address. It's one of the drawbacks of the strategic plan that we first implemented in the 80s is they looked at it as a blueprint that couldn't be touched for 3 to 5 years. Just a comment, we've worked really hard with our district to review elementary education in a K-5 paradigm. And tonight's presentation, being a joint presentation, really solidifies the fact that we work together as a single unit. We may have two separate schools, but our staffs work together to ensure that our curriculum is aligned vertically and horizontally, and that we're cognizant of what's happening in the school, so that it's a continuum of not only soft skill development but academic development. You don't find that in a lot of districts. If you're not careful, you have two elementary schools, K2 through 5, they become islands like themselves. They become very disconnected. We're very fortunate to value the connectivity of those two schools. So thank you for the joint presentation.
High five on that. Nice.
Very,
Nino was actually part of creating our school for this. Any questions?
Justin,
Yeah, I mean,
Sorry.
I'll let you.
I walked away.
That's okay. I just wanted to add, and it's a little bit of a takeoff of Brad, of course, but lots of wonderful things happen, of course. And I was trying to listen very carefully as to, you know, what we may have identified as what needs to be improved, and then we're putting these things in place. And I was just wondering if you could share with the school committee what you believe maybe your biggest challenge is currently at your school, or something that you'd love to try to close the gap on. And it may be unique to the year that we're in, the year that we just came off of, or not. But just, and it doesn't have to be one thing, but if there was something where you felt like, geez, we have to keep throwing resources at this, this is where we need to make up some ground, I would love for you to share that with us.
I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I do feel like the social emotional needs of our kids are at the forefront, how to help them. I feel like and I'm going to put this on Mrs. Steele's PE survey, we have gotten a lot of information on how to identify trauma-informed kids. I feel like what we need is now, how do we help them? Like, how do we adapt the curriculum? Like, I had a student today who was exhausted, and we let this child sleep because that's what this child needed. And I'm like, okay, well, and then, you know, the child woke up, the child was upset, the child was crying. So it's like, okay, and that's happening more and more regularly. So the support, so I think funding, we have a school adjustment council this year, which was a change. Prior to that, we had a school counselor, which I think is huge, with the resources. The additional BCBA that Mrs. Snow brought on board, fantastic resource because we're tapping into her. That I feel like is a big need, and I don't know about like closing the gap because I am seeing a lot of kids that are having gaps, but I think we'll get there. But to me, I am worried about the children's emotional state and the way they're handling things. And some days I say to Ms. Deacon, I'm at a loss. How do we help this child? We've done this, this, and this. And that's what I'm tapping into our school psychologists, our school LECBA resources, trying to reaching out to Cheryl, you know, what can we do? What can I try? Because I feel like that's the biggest thing for me.
Yeah, and I would agree with everything that you just said. And I was just having a discussion with two teachers while I was in the office this afternoon. And one of the things that the teacher noted is how there's so many skills that kids came to Russell Street without. She said, this teacher said, I'm shocked by how many kids can't tie their shoes. Like the coping skills are so low. You know, I'm hesitant to tell a story, but kids not being able to manage their little baggie of money at the book fair, or the disappointment if a book was gone. A book that they saw yesterday wasn't in the pile anymore today. I was saying to a child today, like, hey, that book still exists. It's just not here. Like, here's where you could go on Amazon tonight and order that. But it was like, you know, level 12 tiers. You know, unable to cope around, you know, not liking the apple that's on their lunch tray. Like I get, you know, they just basic kinds of things like that, that we're trying to figure out. You know, in the discussion that I was having with this teacher, I was saying like maybe we need to like at each grade level come up with a summary of things and say like these are things that typically kids at this age level can do. This teacher was saying I have kids that don't know their address. Like phone number is a completely separate thing because of cell phones and it's hard. But for kids to say, I can't tell you my address, you know, the teacher was like, that's alarming. Like when you say, you know, what's your house address, they don't know. And so those are the kinds of things that, you know, she was saying, like, you know, it seems like these little soft skills, but they should know them. And we were just brainstorming briefly on how we could maybe put something together for the end of the year to kind of put that out to families entering into the summer months to be able to say, like, these are some things to maybe prep, like they're
like a summer checklist.
Yeah. Like, right, you know what I mean? But so I don't really have a solid plan, but I think, you know, things that Michelle was talking about, plus some of these things that kids typically would have come to school knowing and they don't.
Now, another topic that came up at our leadership meeting is because we have such a diverse community, I feel like we need to tap into the people that we are close to with the diverse background to reach out to those people that we're not getting. Like how to communicate with them. Different cultures have different values, and I don't want a family member to feel offended because I don't know that culture. So that's something that we talked about in our leadership team is how to reach out to them, how to do it appropriately, how to so that they're not offended, but to also share that this is what's going on, and it's not that's so it's the culture. Like I feel like cultural and community outreach again is still going to be a big focus for us next year because of our community members.
And something that really needs to be reiterated. First of all, I'm pleased with the learning that's happened this year and the closing of learning gaps. You don't see that in that presentation. It goes way beyond. That's one sense. It's powerful, but teacher assessments are equally powerful. But you can't expect to close learning gaps quickly if students aren't ready to learn. And as a school committee, I just want to reemphasize the fact that after the pandemic, and we're still in a pandemic, you call it a pandemic, it doesn't matter, we're still dealing with it. There are certain behaviors that we're dealing with, and readiness that we're dealing with, that needs to be taken care of first. And it makes sense. If any one of you were put into a high school calculus classroom, the teacher was going really, really fast, you get stressed. And the opportunity or chances you're going to retain that information and learn would decrease according to the level of stress that you have. And our kids are no different. So our focus is to make sure that our kids are ready to learn as well. The learning gaps are narrowing, and we're going to continue to narrow as our students learn and become students. You know, it's a phrase I never thought I would say in my career, but this is K through 12, folks. This isn't just elementary. This is in high school as well. Dr. Harrington can certainly confirm the statement that I've made. Our teachers have done a wonderful job getting kids back in the classroom, becoming part of that classroom. But it wasn't something that just happened naturally. It had some things that we taught. Some of our students were far more adaptable and were able to get back in the swing of things faster than others, but some weren't. And so our year, we keep saying to people, this year was harder than last year when we had remote learning and hybrid learning. And one of the reasons why it is so hard is we have so many students at different cognitive levels, at different social and emotional levels, and then at different levels of mental wellness. And those are all compounded challenges that we deal with on a daily basis.
That's well, everything you're talking about, children and families. I'm curious also for the educators, because this has been really an exhausting few years for them, very much so. And so what are you sort of seeing with the staff and what sort of support resources are being given to them to support the children? Because oftentimes they're triggered in their own trauma when they're supporting a child going through trauma. So what does that look like?
The staff, trying to give them as much time as they can. Like we just had our professional development yesterday, and Cheryl and I talked before, and we're like, we're just going to give them time to do what they need to do to get ready. And she said, yep, let's just give them that time. So rather than compound another topic of discussion, giving them the time to talk, to collaborate, our door is open. The staff has been stressed this year, for sure. Letting them know that we're here for them. What can we do? I think right off the bat, from the beginning of the year, they were stressed about how am I going to teach the curriculum. We both said, pump the brakes. It's not about curriculum right now. It's making sure that they feel comfortable and safe here. So if we get to that end of the year, we're supposed to be great. If we don't, we'll get there. We'll get there. So I think we both took that on with our staff. They just need to feel comfortable. Make sure the kids feel comfortable. I think just reiterating for them what can we do for you, how can we help you, what resources can we do for you.
Yeah. And I think the same as, saying that when you stand at the bus every day and wave to all the kids, I look in every classroom window every day where I'm like there's a reason that I collect the lunch slips, and it's so I can peek in and nod or thumbs up or whatever to the teachers, and you can tell that, so I know if I look in and the teacher looks like they're struggling, I can go back and visit later. So we really try to you just try to keep your finger on the pulse of that and see what people need, we have conversations about it all the time, but sometimes it's just a matter of are you okay? Do you need a break? Can I offer something to you?
And giving them permission to disconnect, get their lives back. I think we've all noticed that, including us as a group, that it was relearning for all of us. We were working 24/7, 7 days a week, and there was no free time. There was no gym time. And to tell yourself it's okay. You can go out for something with your spouse. You can spend time with your family. Start taking better care of yourself. We worked really hard on that this year to try to reestablish what a work-life balance looks like. It was, I'll be frank, it was lost. We were trying to do what we needed to do to be successful with our students and families. Now we kind of need to get back into some better balance.
And these are incredibly conscientious people that we're talking about. So yes. It's, when you're saying it's okay to not do that at 10 o'clock at night, some of them still do it twice at 10 o'clock, you have to say I asked you for a little thing of bullets, not 12 paragraphs, but they're just incredibly conscientious, hardworking people, and they want the best for every single kid that's sitting in front of them. So it's hard to drive that point home with them.
And we start our staff meetings always with celebrations. We start with celebrations. What are we celebrating? Who are we celebrating? Who are we passing the title bar of excellence on? So we do that, and we do the typical, treats for them and stuff for them. But those are tangible things. Those are great, and then we sprinkle them in. But it's more letting them know, like Mrs. Temple said, we're there for them. What do you need? Our door is open. Do you need a break? Do you need a mental health day? Because then take it. Yeah, because you're going to be better off. The kids are going to be better off. You take the day. So,
that support is huge. I think you can certainly feel it, and it's really great to hear about it. And similarly, it carries down to the children and the affirmations. I always know what the affirmations are because I hear them at home, and I think that starts with the teachers and really feeling that as well in the community. No, thank you guys. It's great stuff.
Thanks. It's been a great conversation, and appreciate it.
Can I just say, not a question for them, but at some point, they mentioned Care Solace. I know we were all very excited about Care Solace last time. I'd love an update at some point, just a feedback about are people using it, are they trying it out? Not now, we've got a full agenda, but that'd be great to hear at some point.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Certainly bring that information back.
Okay.
All right. Next, we're going to have our business manager, Steve Mark, give us an update on the financial report.
On screen. So enclosed in the packet is our typical cost center budget report. Again, no surprises here. We're in very good shape this year. We've had some efficiencies within the budget this year. We've actually been able to do some great building projects. You probably didn't notice because you're not at the high school a lot, but in one of the videos, you saw the new floor in the basement of the first floor of the high school that we were able to replace. Those tiles are 20 years old and cracked and everything, so we're able to do that this year. So no surprises here. We're in good shape till the end of the year. Out of the $5 million, again, I just remind listeners and school committee that a big chunk of that is salaries. The salaries yet to pay. We have the last 2 months of the fiscal year here for salaries for all the employees, and then we also have about $1.9 million that we will pay out for teacher summer salaries. So that's included in that as well. So it may look like we have a lot of money left for the end of the year with $5 million 2 months ago. Our typical monthly run rate is a little over $2 million anyway. So we're right on task, right on cue. So be glad to answer questions or provide additional information if school committee asks.
Board member, any question?
Just thank you for the explanation, and I'll note that, you know, one of the categories that we're chugging along is that, you know, 81% student and staff support, and just on the tails of what we just heard, we've got about a 250,000 or so left to get us to June 30th. School's going to be out June 22nd or something, so it's right around the corner. I'm assuming that we have that money earmarked for, that's not salaries, I don't think. That's,
Not necessarily. Well, it could be stipend. It could be, you know, we still have a spring sports schedule to get through with officials.
So were you asking, Justin, if there's money left that we could
just wanted to
left over that we could
just
throw that
sure it's going
problem?
to get spent. It's going to get spent. You know, as best we can. After we just heard about all the special support that's needed.
Yep, we are in constant communication with the principals and the team, and if there's needs that they identify, we identify the funds to support those programs. Absolutely.
Yeah, we have to have a spending plan.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
So we're good.
Thanks, Steve. That brings us to a new business. That Steele's going to tell us a little bit about our Connections program.
Great. Michelle said she didn't want to steal my thunder, but steal away because it means it's being talked about. I don't like it at all. So I'm happy to talk and tell everyone this evening about the Connections program that we have coming up. Thank you, Steve. Perfect. The flyers up on the screen for you. So this is an idea that's been brewing for a little while. And I'm so glad that it's coming to fruition, that is happening. And so Connections is an evening of workshops open to all LPS parents, guardians, and caregivers. It's going to take place on Wednesday, May 18th from 5:30 to 7:45 at the middle school. There will be 2 sessions of workshops. The first will run from 5:30 to 6:30, and there are 3 options to pick from. They're on the screen on the left side. So if we see them there, cultivating a mindful connection between home and school, kids and anxiety, and parenting post-pandemic. The second session of workshops will run from 6:45 to 7:45, and there are 4 options to pick from, and they are on the right side there. And so we have connecting parents and teachers, let's collaborate to address anxiety and social emotional learning in our children. Buckle Up, helping students and parents navigate middle school. Goals and Roles, helping students and parents navigate high school. So you have the transition periods there, going from elementary to middle school, and from middle school to high school. And then the fourth one is cell phone and social media use. There is 15 minutes built in very intentionally in between the 2 workshops. This is an in-person event, so there will be that transition time in between, the use of going to visit the tables that'll be there, and resources, but also very intentionally built in so that the connections can be made, not only between a presenter and someone that's attending, but also parent to a parent, right, or guardian to guardian, to ask those questions, to say, hey, you know, I noticed you're here, I think we have children in the same grade, can we exchange numbers, right? It's just being able to make those connections there. So we're asking if it's possible to sign up for the event, just so we have a ballpark of how many to expect that evening and at the workshops. But sign up is not required. I do not want that to inhibit anyone from just showing up that evening. So if you realize that plans got canceled and you're available, please by all means come to the middle school. There was a link to the sessions and the signups in the letter that went home last Friday. And the flyer, that first page, is also in the principal's weekly emails. The second page here that, thank you, Steve, is scrolling up to for everyone to see, it's also in the school committee packet, is a description of those workshops. So I listed out the titles for you, but here's an actual description of what's going to be discussed and shared in that workshop and who's going to facilitate those workshops. So in addition to the workshops, EHS, which is the Elder and Human Services, will have a table there at the middle school that evening, as will NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And both those tables will have many resources that are available and accessible to all that are there in attendance. To offer an event like this is really a total team effort. And I just want to preemptively thank the educators who were very willingly, they all agreed to be part of this and to offer their expertise. And so you just asked about teacher stress, right? And it was one of my concerns of going to each one of these educators and saying, hey, I got this idea. We want to do it, but there's a lot going on. Within seconds of explaining the purpose, the intention, why we're doing this, they all said yes so immediately and so passionately because they feel very strongly about the benefit of what a night like this can do. And so I really appreciate all the educators that you will see listed there as facilitators. It's a good amount. It's spread between all 4 buildings that are going to be there that evening to share their expertise and their passion about topics that are really relevant and are topics that are on everyone's minds at the moment. And so I appreciate them being there for that evening, as well as EHS and NAMI for joining us with their many resources. And I just really look forward to the event, not only because of the content, but also because of the connections that hopefully will be made amongst school personnel and families that evening. And so if you are available on the 18th, we look forward to seeing you there.
Great, thanks, Ms. Steele. Those are all great topics. You have a question, Joseph?
I did. It's just this is terrific, and it's going to be great for those that are there.
Yeah.
So, and I know we can't, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. Is there anything that we're preparing? Are we gonna have these taped in the event that we need to reference these going forward? Like people are busy, right? They've got conflicts. Maybe those that need this information the most aren't as interested in attending. What as a district are we trying to do to bring this information to those folks that maybe need it the most, that won't be there?
Yeah, so we're reaching out to some families that we feel could benefit, that if there's a transportation issue or anything of that sort, we are happy to help. EHS has been really wonderful. Amy from Elder Human Services has also offered, I've given her the information, and she's reaching out to people that she is currently working with or has worked with to start the information. You're right, it benefits the most that attach, right? Just like if people were there, it was great, but not everyone goes. At this point, we're not planning on recording the sessions, but what we are thinking is that this is kind of like the trial run. It's the first time we're gonna see how it goes, and we're gonna learn from it to be able to do something next year. And so hopefully it becomes more of an annual, and pending how it goes, then next year we can consider making some recordings of the workshops and offering them virtually too.
Great.
I mean, part of what we're trying to do here is do authentic community outreach. It's part of a community school concept. And the taping doesn't create the authentic interactions that are necessary to bring schools and families together. So we're going to reach out, which I think is the best thing we can do to families that we feel really need to be there, and keep encouraging them. And hopefully, they're going to become a little more comfortable talking to schools, etc. I know everybody's busy, and we have to take that into account as well. But as Beth pointed out, we're dipping our toe in the water here, and we're committed to not only working with our students and our teachers, but we want to do greater outreach to our community, especially considering we've been through the last 2 years. There's been an isolation that's been created. We really need to get people to the table and talk about things that are important to all of us. We're in this together, and we educate our students together. It's not schools versus families. It's schools and families together that harmoniously working together to prepare students so that they're successful as they continue their journey. So I'm cautious with the taping part. I mean, for some people that might work, but our bigger wish is to get people with us and have those conversations.
I wasn't suggesting that it could take the place of actual in-person attendance, because I think that's extremely powerful. And your explanation of giving it a try, I commend everyone's efforts in putting this together. I do think that it's something that can build on itself, and just I don't know what the turnout is. Hopefully it's wonderful, but I just think as a community, we're going to be better from those that just attend because they can pass on words of wisdom. What I was thinking was, at some point we're going to identify someone that would have benefited from hearing this information and maybe just having an outlet or a resource, but maybe doing it again in the fall, who knows? But it's really good work. It's just going to benefit those who attend. And for everyone listening, please attend and pass the word along.
And it is such a busy time of year.
It's so busy.
Well, I think along those lines, and certainly not for this event, but for any future event, to never underestimate the benefit of childcare in attendance, because in the names of inclusivity and single families and travel has started again for work, and sometimes it's the intention of wanting to be there, but just not being able to.
So I love that you said that. We have been in touch with NHS at the high school, and so they are passing around a sign-up sheet. I just can't commit to saying that there's going to be babysitting or childcare until I know that it's something I can offer. And so it is something that we are actively trying to make happen, because I 100% agree with everything that you just said, and I think it is so important for us to be able to do that. So that is a work in progress that I'm hoping we will have an update on early next week. Thank you.
Can I just a couple of things? I love this. I love it, love it, love it. I love the fantastic topics. I see this and the care solace, which we talked about last time, as being the response this school committee and the community asked for. We want you all to be proactive, we want the whole team to be proactive in trying to help us support our students and their mental health. And this is everything we could have asked for. I wonder if, well, I guess a couple of things. One is, I see these as part of the Care Solace and this being part of the same kind of initiative. I wonder if it might be useful to have a table where someone can just show someone how to use Care Solace, just as they walk through this informational table. I also wonder if CPAC could, maybe if there's a way they could be there to help, let parents whose kids are on IEPs or 504s just connect with the person and meet the liaisons. There may be a way CPAC can have a presence there, not a presentation, but a presence.
Right.
And it's great we're asking for volunteers. It's great the NHS could volunteer. I would suggest for something like this, I'm guessing this committee could find money to pay babysitters if we actually had to do that moving forward. Maybe not for this time, maybe not, but as we think about how to build on this for the beta version moving forward, I think that that's certainly something that could maybe enable some families that need to be there to be there. The numbers could be really low, but the impact could be high. So I think that's an example of what Justin was thinking about earlier, is if there's something you need, and it's certainly if it's a low number like that, I'm guessing we can fund it for things like this especially. That's just me speaking, maybe not for the whole committee, but I think
I'm just trying to get Stella paid.
No, Stella's gone. She's kidding. As of right now, she's done with NHS. So I just thanks so much for this. It seems incredible. The more people we can get there, the better.
And to piggyback on what Justin said, if you're out in the community, you find that there's a group of people that need some of their needs met, let us know. Yeah. We're really committed to connecting with our community more than we ever have. Realize the importance of reaching out, coming in there, creating opportunities for us to interact more than we have in the past. These are different times. We all realize that we need to come up with new ways of interacting to try to get people back where we were pre-pandemic. It's going to take a while. So we're really excited about this. This is something we've been talking about for months. So it's really powerful that it's going to happen. Special thanks to all the staff that jumped up forward.
Yeah, and I would just add to that. I mean, I think the topics are fantastic, and I'm looking at the website right now, and it's like 5+ teachers or staff members per session. It's not one per session. It's also kind of a cool way for parents to be able to connect with their kids, with staff members. I go to all the parent-teacher conferences, but I only meet my kid's own teacher, and in middle school, you only meet 1 or 2 of their teachers, where they have 5, 6+. So this is a really nice way to actually interact with teachers, engage with them in a more of almost like a teacher setting, where like they're counseling and teaching us as the students. It's a cool, different way to engage with the staff that most parents never get.
Exactly, and that was one of the things when in speaking with all the staff members, that they said, they were like, well, we want to make sure, like, where is this? That was one of their first questions, and I was like, in a classroom.
Yeah.
It's going to be in a classroom. Because they wanted that informal, intimate setting, right? We're used to kind of going to those larger, in the auditorium or in a cafeteria being with, right? And that serves a purpose, but this is kind of serving that different purpose to be able to have that more informal conversation and in touch base, right? To be able to connect and put a name to a face.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, thank you. So the flyer, we can have Dorothy send it to you again, but if any social media that you'd like to push out, please, we would appreciate that. We'll just spread the word.
That'd be great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And just on that same topic, I was just going to add, like, you know, we do a good job of putting things if we get updates and sending them out separately, but sometimes it's really important to add, you know, the robocall and maybe send home a printed flyer in the backpacks of the other kids. To really make sure that people get the message and have the information with enough time to plan.
So the next item, I want to take away any trepidation that anybody may have whenever we put COVID update on. I think we're kind of programmed to wonder what the next line is going to be. We were at a point where we needed to bring some data to the school committee. As a superintendent, I'm not asking that we do anything different at this point in time. We just look at doing that. When you look at the first table there, this shows you pre-April break what our case number was, and our prevalence rate was really low, really well. And if you go to the next slide, if we look at the post-February break, it looks quite different than our 2 weeks after the April break. It's kind of interesting how those two vacation points look so different. And you can see our middle school seems to be the one that has been hit the hardest with COVID cases. They are spread out through the 3 grades. There are no clusters, excuse me, that we can identify. I don't have any serious concerns at this point in time. The symptoms for our students are, for the most part, mild. For our staff, it's a little more mixed. We're finding it again, it's just a litmus test of our microcosm we have here, but some of our staff are having more severe reactions to the drugs. So it's not constant. But we had a meeting with the Commissioner of Education today, and talking about a lot of things. COVID was one of them. But their medical experts feel that next week we should be seeing a downswing again in the state, so I'm putting it right. And as you can see from the 5th, you can see the numbers starting to decrease. And hopefully that's going to hold. And again, I'm open to any discussion that you may have. If you have a different impression of the numbers, I will share that as well.
Obviously, it's a jump there for Russell Street, but seeing the 3 on the 4th, and do we have any reported cases today?
We do. They were going down. Shaker Lane 2, Russell Street 2, Middle School 5, High School 2.
I think it would just be something we got to again keep an eye on for next week and see what's going on, but should be declining. Any other thoughts?
I mean, I think this is not totally unexpected. I think we're seeing, now we're 2 years into this plus, we're seeing things are cyclical. There was a big outbreak, in December, January, and now 3 months later, it's a bit of an uptick. I think it's to be expected. Thank goodness our town, we've said this over and over, has great vaccination rates. We got the clinics going, and there are treatments and medications now. And I think that, sickness people are getting, we're in good shape.
Definitely a far better spot.
Yeah.
Than we were a year ago. And I love bar graphs, so put a bar graph on there as well. It's very easy to read what's happening.
I'm trying to remember in all of our discussions before, like the prevalence rate that we talk about with the Board of Health. One of the things we said was to the community is hey, we're going to keep monitoring this. We're going to pay attention to it. If something happens and we have to act, we will. The threshold for most of those was 4% over 2 weeks, right? Is that what we're thinking about? So we're still under that for all the schools, but the middle school is certainly above it. You're saying that right now your administrative team does not think we need to put the mask back on for a week, or?
No, and I would, Brad, I would really hesitate to go to that extent. I think the first step, if we have to do anything, would be strongly recommend go back to mandatory masks. If this was in the middle of winter, I would probably have a very different approach to the city-based conversation. But our kids are going to be outdoors more. We know that the newest strain of Omicron is as infectious as the previous strain. But if we were pinpointing clusters, I would have greater concerns. But as we've talked about so many times around this table, our schools are within the community. It's hard to separate what happens in our schools from the community. And the only way, in my opinion, mitigation strategies can make a pronounced difference in a short period of time is if the community and schools are doing the same thing for mitigation. And if one is doing something and the other one isn't doing something, then the effects of mitigation strategies are as pronounced as they would be if they're doing the same thing. So I really don't have a high level of concern at this point in time. I don't see any clusters. I see those numbers going down. And if they don't go down, then we're going to have a conversation.
Well, so for me, what you said, I agree certainly that if there's no clusters in the school that we can identify, then and you're hearing from the state and everything, like I'm more willing to monitor really closely and maybe recommend masking. But if we are seeing clusters, and look, we told the community we're going to pay attention to this and might consider it. I don't want to say, well, as long as the community's not masking, then we're not going to consider it. I don't want to make those completely coupled together. I'm not advocating for it right now. I'm saying that if these numbers remain the same, I probably will be advocating for it. But right now, I'm willing to wait and defer. But I want us to watch it.
Right. My point, Brad, was not to do exactly what we're doing in the broader community, but one of the reasons why we were as successful as we were when the numbers were increasing when we had the mask mandate was because we were doing the same thing. And it makes sense. I mean, our kids are with us for 6 hours a day, and then they're with their families and families. So, and you're right. I mean, we never did put masking off the table. But I just really feel at this point in time that that's something that needs to be entertained. You feel differently as a school committee. It's your obligation to have that discussion together.
So if I can just say one more thing, one thing that gives me confidence is you were copied on the email exchange with Lynn Snow asking about the, and probably share the whole committee, about the participation in pool testing remains at the same relatively high level. Yeah, and the state will continue funding that. So we'll continue getting a close look at what's happening in our schools.
Till the end of the year.
Yeah, that gives me greater confidence that we're actually capturing what's happening here.
I'm really glad that we have that opportunity to continue with the pool testing and take on tests. And Brad, I hope as well that word does get out there. I mean, we have our COVID page dashboard that we update every week. And if people look at that, I would like to think that as rates rise, that we'll see more people wanting to mask in our schools and start taking that ownership as well together.
Thanks.
Lynn.
Hi, I'm here virtually. I just wanted to thank Brad for mentioning that we do have stable participation, which is good. And I can say that the pool testing is continuing to work. We've caught a number of the cases this week through pool testing, and we're in the process of catching more. We have our results from today's pool testing coming in right now. we have several positive pools at the middle school that we'll be reflex testing for tomorrow. So the pool testing is definitely helping us.
Thank you, Lynn.
And the numbers on our dashboard look a little different than the tables we presented tonight. The tables that we have tonight include the number of families and reported cases over the break. So we don't include those on the dashboard because we're more focused on where we identify schools.
I'll just add that I think it's appropriate that you brought this forward tonight because we did have that, that 4% figure out there when things were a little different. So thank you for putting it on the agenda just so we can all kind of take a look at it. I'm in agreement with your recommendation with what I've heard tonight from most of the community members or committee members. It's amazing, it's like this was such a thing because it was so contagious, and that each variant that comes out, if you didn't believe it or not, it's even more contagious. So I think what we've all learned is we're living with this. I guess my question would be is, what sort of strain has this put on the buildings with staff? I mean, it's nice to catch the cases, but if you're catching asymptomatic cases and staff's out, and I'm just
gonna knock on wood before I answer.
We're okay.
We're okay. Yeah, knock on wood for me too. It's such a delicate balance, and we have very few staff that now and out.
Right, and the old adage of what goes up must come down. I think like it was the middle school all year long that sort of had the lowest numbers, and that now it's their chance to shine. It's just the way it works, and I'm pleased to hear that vaccination rates remain high within the community boost. Everyone's sort of doing what they're supposed to be doing for the most part, and it is what it is. But I would just hope we have a smooth end to the school year.
And I'll reiterate again from the facility side, we're still doing all of the mitigation factors. There's still plenty of hand sanitizer and wipes and disinfecting solution around, so we encourage everyone to continue those practices. Hand washing is a big thing, just continue to do that.
Can we ask Jason if he wants to comment about what's happening in the middle school, or if there are things we can do to, if not, we're not mandating masking, but to encourage and make that part of the community message there, Jason?
Yeah, I'm happy to add to this. I would say that we should strongly, and I'm happy to send out a letter to families tomorrow to say we should strongly encourage students to mask. What we have found is that since the masks have come off, I don't want to say that this is true for all, but it seems to be that there's a feeling that once the masks came off, that COVID was over, and that students could just be who they wanted to be. And I'll speak to the 8th grade, for example. Our 8th graders, they love to hug and chase and camel fight and want to just be all over each other at lunch and recess. These are those moments where we have to decide how serious are we about wanting to mitigate these standards, because we want kids to socialize. And these are those moments where they do that. And it is a very fine gray line where how do we allow students to socialize and maybe recapture the last 2 or 3 years of maturation? Normally, this sounds awful, but normally by this time of the year, 8th graders, all they want to do is sit in the cafeteria, sit on their phones and chat. This year, they want to run around, chase, climb each other, jump up and down. I think there is a regression that we're seeing. And so how do we as a middle school effectively manage the COVID risk with the socialization part of it? And this is the fine line that we walk. And so I would guess what I would say is to you all, I would be happy to put out a letter first thing in the morning, encouraging families to strongly think about continuing to mask their students and to separate. However, there are times during the day students, they just want to be kids where is the social emotional line versus the pandemic line? And that those seem to be the fluid questions that we have to answer daily.
Yeah, I would like to answer to that, I believe.
Yep, go ahead, Lynn.
Oh, hi. So I just wanted to kind of echo what Jason's saying. I think that would be a good idea. And I think also what Jason's saying is very accurate. There's a lot more physicality to the middle school adolescents than you would typically see. They're kind of more younger, kind of behavioral topography. But I think there's two things that we can do to kind of mitigate that. I think from a staffing perspective, we can remind students, whether COVID is in place or not, the importance and the benefit of personal space and maintaining your personal space bubble, but also the messaging that parents can reinforce that at home is very good too, because I think if we're strongly encouraging masking and also reminding the students how important personal space is, even when COVID isn't in the building, is they're very instructional and educative reminders that we can send along to the students.
That I'd like to see here is, this discussion has been very powerful, very good, but we really need to be on the same page here. Discussion is really school committee superintendent and administration of the middle school and Lynn as well. If we send a letter home, then when do we send a letter home stating that we're not strongly recommending? We don't have any prevalence factor identified.
Yeah, I don't know about sending a letter. I'm not a huge fan of that. I think that sends a bit of a message of panic, like numbers are up, they're continuing to go up. We're already seeing them maybe start to go down. And you're saying that you were on a call earlier saying that the health experts are saying that we should see a downturn in the next week or so. I don't know, sending an email strongly recommending everybody start masking up again. It seems a little bit alarmist to me, but I don't know, that's how I feel about it. And then do we send another message a week later saying we don't recommend, it's not recommended anymore?
I do think that we would want to wait a week. I want to see another week of data so that we can actually look at a 2-week trend post break. But I think it's something to keep in the front of our minds at this point.
And Jen, if I can add to that, I completely understand where you're coming from. But I remember meetings a few weeks ago where we wanted to be proactive when numbers got up. And so I don't mind sending a letter, not as an alarmist thing, but just to say, hey, listen, we've seen a rise. If you're concerned, continue to, maybe think about this, not as a oh my God, we have to do this. But I want us to be consistent in our message. And I feel like a few weeks ago, we were very sincere about saying if the numbers got up that we would reach out to families. And I think this is an opportunity at the middle school to say, hey, listen, we're not mandating anything. We're not asking for anything other than for you to consider the possibility that numbers are up. And if you choose to ask your kids to wear masks, we encourage it. Not an alarmist, not a mandate, not anything else other than just something to think about.
Yeah, we do that though. I'm going to be transparent here. I don't have a problem with doing that, but I have a bigger problem with not identifying benchmark when we send a letter back and say, our prevalence rates are down to whatever. We feel comfortable, not requesting that you strongly encouraging for that. So if we do this and then all of a sudden in a week we send a letter without any rationale, then it's not. So I just want to make sure we're consistent and there's a rationale that we're using when we're making decisions here. Again, I'm not opposed to having Jason send a letter, but I want to make sure that first of all we're on the same page. Secondly, what triggers another letter? What does that mean? I don't believe just because it's the end of the week we send a letter.
No, but this is
has to be something.
This committee in the past has said we don't want benchmarks. You'll have to. We'll know it when we see it, kind of thing. And when we told the community that, and I think it'd be reasonable to say that if the prevalence rate is 225% higher than the previous agreed upon prevalence rating. That's noteworthy. And Jason, I like the way you phrase it then. This isn't an alarmist. This is, if he sends a message out, if we agree that we want him to do that, it's informational. Hey, we're keeping the community informed. We're not doing these reports. There's a good chance that most of the community are not aware there is a prevalence rate of 8.9% at the middle school. And some people may want to act on that information. Other people, maybe most will say, I'm good with this. But if I were a parent and didn't have the information that we have right now, I wish I had it. And whether that's I think it's appropriate just to send a note, hey, just so you know, and if do with this information what you will. If you want your kids to mask up, we'll support that. If not, we're all good there too. But I think we as a committee told the community we would consider this information, and I think if we were working with a prevalence rate of 4%, and we're at 8.9, it's valuable to have this conversation. I'll defer, of course, to the will of the committee. But
yeah, it's kind of it's kind of interesting, Brad. We look at numbers that we create, and the 4% was a deliberation that went on for quite a bit of time.
Yeah, with the Board of Health basically telling us, understood.
And you're right. You've heard me say many times that you need to look at the environment, not just the number. Again, I just want to see where we are as a group before we do anything. If we soften the letter, it could be done in a way that we're not looking at a prevalence rate. We're just saying there's an increase in cases. Each one is diverse to that. Consider
I think I'm all for letting people know in the community, they take note this is the prevalency rate at the time. I don't think we need to make suggestions on how they handle that information.
I'm in agreement there. I think if we want to send a message out, it's got to be factual. It's got to be informative. We're kidding ourselves to say we want you to mask at school, and then we're going to let you do whatever you want on the weekends and after school. I mean, that just it doesn't work. So to have an opinion as to what someone should do when they walk in the school building, and then we know that they're going to do what they want to do when they're outside of school. So I think if anything, you might want to just say, we just want this Friday would mark the end of that 2-week preference, because we don't actually have 2 weeks since April break, I think. So right, tomorrow. It's Thursday night. So I think you could send a letter out that just says, we just wanted to alert you that the 2-week prevalence rate for the middle school was this, and you should just be aware of that and take any precautions that you want to.
And some people may mean
nothing.
Maybe they don't, but some people may say, hey, look, I'm going mask when I'm doing a carpool for the next week, because
it's out. There's more of it out there. Yeah.
I'm fine with that.
I think that's the way to go.
Consensus?
It's fine with me.
Perfect.
Now you're really part of the school committee. You've had to weigh in on this.
I agree with everything you all said. I think the information is important, but I don't hire strongly recommend.
So, Jason, do you have clear direction?
Yes, I will draft a letter tonight. Kelly, I'll run the draft by you in the morning. I think the most appropriate way, and please direct me as a newer principal if I'm offline by this, but given what I know about our community, I certainly don't want to send a letter that's with the expectation that the masks are there, but to highly encourage people to think about where we are and to really consider, at least for the next few days, sending their children with masks. So I would like to send you a letter, Kelly, in the morning as a draft. I'd like you to approve it. And with school committee's approval, thank you for allowing me to do this. I think this is a very proactive opportunity to say, hey, listen, we didn't expect the numbers to get this high, and yet they have. And so we want to be responsive rather than reactive. And I think that's a big part of it. Being proactive is is far more important than reactive in this situation, and I approve, and I'm happy to be a part of that.
You inhaled up. Want to say something?
I'm good.
Okay.
Move on.
I was
Ready to move on from all of this, let's be honest.
Moving on.
Thought we had, but.
School bus registration.
Yes, hard to believe we're at that time of year again. Bus registration, online bus registration will open up on March 16th. We'll put the link.
March 16th?
May. May, sorry, May 16th. We will put the link on the website. We will ask the principals to include the link in their newsletters as well, so parents will have access to that. So we just wanted to get that word out. So if you're thinking about having your students ride the bus for next year, make sure you register them so we can do the bus routes and make sure we have enough seats for all the kids. So thank you very much.
This is our second opportunity in the meeting for interested citizens. Dorothy, anyone? Then we move on to subcommittee reports.
John, would you mind if I just mention one?
No, go right ahead.
About Tiger's Den. I mean, as you all know, we're having difficulty finding staff throughout the year. We've managed to keep the program going, but we would like to offer it to more families. We met with Park and Rec this week and brainstormed together, and we're gonna go into this with a joint venture next year. The Park and Rec department is going to focus on grades 4 to 7. The school department will focus on grades K to 3. We're going to try to increase capacity for all levels by doing that. But parent still chooses to send their children to Tiger's Den in grades 4 and 5. That's fine. But we just wanted to get more options so we can accommodate more people. So excited about that partnership. We're still working on exactly what that means.
That's exciting. I look forward to hearing more about that.
Yeah, we're excited.
No more. That sounds great.
So we don't have a member right now with BMBC, correct? That's definitely, so we'll skip that. Move on to budget subcommittee.
No report.
Yeah, just to kind of do a financial update, so we're good there. Policy subcommittee, Brad.
We have several policies in front of us for second reading.
Okay.
We went over them last time, and do I need to go back through and explain all the different changes again?
I don't think so. We've had a chance to look at them. So
I did know that Justin caught one of the things as I think it's a total of 6 policies that are in front of us. It's basically a policy scrub looking for 7 one's about the religious holidays, incorporating the changes we made and make sure our policy reflects that. The others are largely making sure that we're using gender neutral pronouns and that just adopting some suggested changes for how they refer to, so it's not vice chairman, it's vice chair, chair, and it's clerk, it says secretary, nothing especially substantive. I know Justin caught a couple of pronouns in one of them, right?
It was just BDD, where we refer to the superintendent as with a male pronoun.
Yeah.
He.
Good catch.
And my only other question was, since I wasn't here last meeting, is some of these appear to have a adopted date and then several got revised, like the Littleton School Committee created these policies, and then others of them sort of reference must be Massachusetts Association of School Committees, right, with a file date revised. So for my own education, I was just curious if these are policies that are sort of have been created for us and we've adopted them, or.
Well, I'm just trying to figure it out. Maybe Dorothy can answer this better. But my understanding is that we have our own policy handbook, and some of these policies have, like, we have a line they don't have. Okay. But there is Mass Association of School Committees that uses the same filing system, BBA, BBD, that kind of thing, and has recommended policy language. And so what we do as a policy committee, it used to be Timlin, Dr. Clinchy, and Dorothy, kind of look at things together. We read our policy, see if it makes sense as our policy. Just, does this still reflect, like, the code of ethics? Does this still reflect what we believe? And just look at it that way. And then we read it next to what the Mass Association is suggesting. and seeing if the language coincides. And usually our policy is based on a previous version of theirs. Theirs is updated, refreshed more frequently. And then seeing if there are differences, do we prefer our current policy or the one they're suggesting? Does that make sense?
Yes.
So the different review dates may be, theirs may be updated more frequently, but our review date is the last time we checked ours against our own wishes and against the MASC.
Gotcha. So the ones that reference file and then Massachusetts Association of School Committees, we're taking their verbatim word for word.
Not
Not necessarily, but it's based on that language.
Okay.
And so there's one of these. I
don't have any issue.
Okay.
I'm just looking to understand.
Well, so am I, right? Because
And,
Timberland was taking the lead on a lot of this, and then I'm trying to fill her shoes and with Dorothy's leadership.
Yeah, so the only one change I would just recommend was just that pronoun for the super, whatever it was.
And that was on BDD.
So there's no other changes. At this point, I'd accept the motion to accept the second reading of the following modified policies: BBPA, BCA, BDA, BDB, BDD, BDE, JHA.
We have to repeat all that. I move to accept.
with BDD as amended.
Correct.
I move to accept the BDD as amended.
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. No executive session.
No, we're good for tonight.
Okay. In that case, I will accept a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second. Second as well.
Second. This is a roll call vote. Justin?
Justin McCarthy, yes.
Eno?
Patel, yes.
Jen?
Jen Gold, yes.
What's your name? Brad?
Mr. Chairman, I vote yes.
Matt Hunt votes yes as well. Thanks, guys.
Do you want to vote?
That's what I was hoping. Okay.
All right, Matt.
Good job, Matt.
Job
Thank
well
you.
done.
Yeah, thank you so much for your leadership.
Yes.
Hey, class.
You know, now comes the best part of the night. We have to rearrange the furniture together.